You know that moment when a tool almost works or a process almost works, but something feels off. You're not quite sure what it is, but you know that it's something. That was me the last couple weeks. I'm working on refining, automating parts of my content creation process. And the first piece is to create a cohesive content strategy, and I had made the decision to do it quarterly. So I had AI helping me to plan the contents. I had created a project in Claude and I told it what I was trying to achieve, and I put some of my context docs in there and I ran it for the first quarter of topics, and everything looked good on paper. Like at first everything was working fine. It had my content pillars and what I was trying to achieve, and it broke it down really nicely into the quarter and months, and it honed in on the shift framework that I use in my business. So I put it in the Notion board and I kind of just let it sit there while I continue to refine the process, because I figured, I think I did this at the beginning of October and the content wasn't going to start to November. So it was going to be November, December, and January. I told it I went 12 weeks. And then it sat in Notion, something didn't feel right. And that's the piece that I needed to work on now as I'm refining this automation process. Because if I don't have the content that I want to create right at the first step, then it's going to throw everything else off kilter. So I had to figure out why, what I needed to change, how I would refine the whole process so that the system all continued to fit together. And that's what I'm going to show you today. So let's jump into it. Okay, so what I did was I created a new thread in Claude and I added 3 pieces of content to it. So I put the original instructions from the first project of the content planner, and then I also added my 2 context docs, which were my business framework and then the content pillars. So I had 7 content pillars and then everything about my business, who I serve, why I serve. And then what else I did was I grabbed the link to the Notion database because I wanted it to look at that as kind of a reference point. And then I just said, like, look, I'm looking at this, it feels off, and I need to try and figure out why. Like, I'm not trying to rebuild it yet. I need to figure out why. So then I told it, one thing that I'm doing right now is a build in public where I'm building stuff and I'm showing you all the results, the good, the bad, and the messy. And I wanted to factor that into the planning because that's a big piece of what I'm putting out there is we can do this. We've got this. Sometimes it takes a couple tries, but we've got this. So then I said, like, let's talk about it. When I want it to have a discussion with me, I tell it, like, this is not implementation, or let's talk about it. And then I always say, ask me questions to clarify and call me out on my stuck points. And this also tells it, like, we are brainstorming and you are part of the collaboration process. Sometimes I will even use collaboration if it starts to go a little sideways. So what it did was now it's looking at all the pieces that I gave it. It fetched the Notion space, it looked at the context documents, it looked at the instructions, and it's like, okay, I have everything that I need, but I still have questions. And this is the key part that some people tend to gloss over or don't give it enough credence, because again, we don't want it to do the work for us. We want it to do the work with us. And so here's what it said. Like, this is what it's coming back to say as the things that I'm not clear about based on the information that you've given me. But what I loved about it is it immediately said, I find the disconnect. there is a disconnect. And the disconnect is that it's structurally correct, but contextually hollow. So it's basically saying, I see your struggle point based on what you told me, but I'm not real clear on what you're trying to tell me. So this is where when you say, ask me questions to clarify, we are collaborating, you are not implementing, it will give you a lot of food for thought questions. And that's exactly what it did, showing the process of how you're thinking through decisions. So it gave me a little recap of here's what I'm seeing, and then we're authenticity first, and I'm seeing that, but what felt off meant, like, I find it useless information. It's fluff. I don't want to give you fluff. And then the build in public angle, which I hadn't really factored that into the first set of instructions, which is just like basically saying this is all going to be on real work. And that's why it was feeling off, because it was fluff pieces or pieces that were maybe covered, but it needed to be covered from a different angle. But it wasn't really in line with what I was trying to do with this whole process. So, and this is what it was. So then it goes on to say, here's like an overview, and then help me understand, what are you actually building, learning, navigating right now? And then what's the real difference between a topic that feels generic and a topic that says, oh, I have something to say about that? And then finally, it's, should the planner generate topics based on your real-time work rather than a pre-planned calendar? And so I took some time to think about that, because I was like, what I'm navigating right now is I'm doing two things. I'm building this automation process. It's like I take a step forward and 2 steps back, a step forward and 2 steps back. And so I wanted to say, like, this is part of the process, people. AI is not the end-all, be-all. And that really is the difference between a generic topic of what AI to use for what, or how to have a conversation with AI, and to how do I really think about the best way to get me unstuck and move me forward. And then finally, I was like, I want it pre-planned so that it's cohesive, but not pre-planned like months ahead of time where I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And so again, I would be trying to fit these pieces in that just didn't fit at all. And so I answered it. I was like, look, here's the thing, right? Like, I'm showing the process through all the parts, the good, the bad, whatever. And then for 2, it was like, the question that it asked me was the real difference. I was like, all of them. Like, you hit on 3 things that were really important to me. And then finally, like, the content ideas you gave me, they were good, but they didn't spark anything in me. Like, they just felt out of alignment. And so I gave it a little more context to the problem, and then it looked at what I put as input and my words. So now it's saying, okay, like, I see the problem and what you're actually doing based on what you want to do. So we continued with the conversation, and then it like reiterates, here's what you actually need. And it's working me through, like, this is what you're telling me that you need. Let's make sure that our visions both align with each other. And so it in a very organized manner, it listed everything so that I could see it and take the time to digest it. And here's the second thing. So the first thing is to make sure that you are giving it the input that it needs. The second thing is make sure that you digest the information that it's returning to you. Sometimes this process is really quick and easy because you have an idea of what's in your mind, but maybe you're looking for like that one piece that doesn't work or that one thing that feels off. And it just, once it's presented in front of you, it's perfectly fine. And other times you need to like really sit with it. Like, is this what I want to do? Now for me, I think this process overall took me like 30 minutes because I had been noodling on this for a while. So I knew what was feeling off and why it was feeling off, and to give it the direction that in my gut felt off. And so it continued there, and it said, what I think you actually need, instead of a content planner spitting out generic topics for you to pick from, current projects, problems, a tracker, a real-time learning log, and a content system. So I was like, I read all this and I was like, well, that's all well and fine. That's a great outlook. But the problem is that the content planner and the topics are part of the content creation process, which I'm trying to automate. And what you're trying to do is get me to organize the information. And that's not what I want. I don't want another tracker. I want something that helps me to see, I'm working on this, and here are ways to present it to the audience that will be helpful and unique. So after I had said that, it was like, oh, that changes everything, because now I'm telling it, like, you're not really paying attention to me. You're kind of going off on your own tangent, and here's what we're discussing in this moment. So what I basically said is, what I need is to take what I'm building on, and then you help me brainstorm different ways that I can present it so that I'm not always behind the 8 ball on topics and ideas and content planning. And I think I said it needs to be cohesive and coherent like a million times, but not really a million times. So then it says, oh, that changes everything, because we're not talking about topic, we're talking about content angles. And that's different than planning. Content planning is actually spitting out a content plan. Content angles is taking a problem and figuring out all the different ways that it will be relevant to people, or that you can present what you're building or what you're creating in real time. It so basically said what it's missing is a systematic way to extract multiple angles from one piece of work so that you're not scrambling for topics. That's exactly what I'm trying to tell it. Right there in a nutshell, this is my big problem. I'm spitting out stuff that's making me scramble for ideas when instead of utilizing the ideas that I already have. And so it said what you actually need is, when I'm working on X, here are 5 to 7 different angles I can pull from the content. And then it gives you a hypothetical, because again, this isn't it doing the thinking for you. It's doing the thinking to make you think even harder. So now it's saying, I have some examples that are hypothetical based on a process. Here's ways I would break it down. Let's look at it so that we're not into the weeds on the actual thing that we're trying to create topics or content on, that we're actually trying to refine this process. And so I was like, oh, this looks great. Like, I really like this because it takes into consideration everything that I'm trying to get across. And so again, here's what I need to understand. So it goes back and it works through the different steps with me. It's because I'm not trying to automate myself out of this process. I want to automate the pieces that are scrambled or that don't need my input. And then it says when I'm proposing. So then it breaks it down like, this is what I think would work for you. Let's talk about it, And then it, again, asks key questions that I could sit back and take all of this in and say, okay, like it's starting to totally get where I'm going. So long story short, this is the way that the process worked with the back and forth. I wanted you to see the back and forth so that you could see it wasn't just information being spit out at me and me saying, okay, now I'm going to make a process based on what Claude told me to do, even though I don't know if it's right or not. Then it started to make assumptions. So I called it out on the assumptions. Like, you're assuming this, and this is not what I meant at all. Okay. Here's some more questions. So anyways, we get down to the point where we start to go through We start to go through the information, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, I like where this is going. I like the sample that you gave me. Now, can we take this and automate it into the Notion space? And it was like, yeah, let's do a make. And I was like, can't we just create a skill or add it to the instructions? And it was like, yeah, that's a better approach. Let me check. We'll worry about the automation later because I don't know if it's really that important. There's another way that I could do this. What we do need is some way to get the information from here into Notion. I could actually use Make as a way to automate it into Notion, but I might as well just ask it for a CSV file and import it into the Notion database, which is exactly what I did. So I had said, here's the link to the Notion database, and here's what I'm trying to do. We worked through the CSV file. There was a couple little glitches with the way that it was formatted, so I exported the database from Notion and imported it into here to say, here's what I'm working with, here are all the fields so you can see the structure. And then it was like, aha, I get it now. I get what you're trying to do. Let's match up the fields. I come back and said it worked, and then this is what it gave me, was the whole set of instructions that I needed for the project. So all I needed to do was copy and paste this and then go to my content plan project and then go to the instructions and copy and paste it into here. And then I tested it once and it worked perfectly. So 3 steps for this process was to refine what wasn't working. And in order to refine what wasn't working, we needed to brainstorm what would work and what wouldn't work. And then the second thing that we needed to do was to test the process and figure out how to get it from point A to point B, which was from the project to the Notion space. And then finally 3 was to update the instructions in the project space, which was create 12 pieces of content in different angles in what I was working on. That's it in a nutshell, how we use AI to help us refine without overtaking our processes or doing something that isn't in alignment with us. If this helped you to think differently about how you're using that for planning, hit like and subscribe, because this tells me that the behind the scenes I'm showing you, it makes a difference and it matters. And if you want to go deeper into building context systems that work with how you think, join me for the Shift Your Context workshop, which is how I create these documents that I put in to give reference to the threads or projects that I'm creating in AI. And thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.